afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try and work without a microphone, as long as you can hear me at the back. Can you hear me okay? Start off by introducing myself. I'm Robin Lister. I'm the headmaster of Malvern College, Hong Kong. My initial 12 years of my career was spent in the university sector, where I studied theology, the nature of religion, education and psychology. However, in the last 25 years or so, I've been working with teenagers as a teacher, a housemaster, a deputy head, a senior deputy head. And now I'm here as headmaster of Malvern College, Hong Kong, as I've just said. I've also got three grown-up children of my own, 2 daughters and a son. There's nothing like having children of your own to really understand how children grow up. But to be frank, it was my years as a housemaster, that means for those of you who aren't familiar with boarding schools, I lived with, it varied between 55 and 65 teenage boys, and my 9 years as a housemaster living with teenage boys taught me an awful lot about teenagers generally, and about boy teenagers in particular. Whatever one talks about, I think it's good to put it into context. We're going to talk very briefly this afternoon about identity formation in children. Now, the appropriate context is teenagers, because that's where the majority of identity formation takes place. So we'll be talking about teenagers, and we'll be talking about teenagers and the particular pressures that they are under in the 21st century. However, much of what I am about to be talking about is as applicable for younger children too. Physiologically, the teenage years we know are changing. It's getting earlier and earlier, and some children can actually hit puberty when they're 10 or younger. But we have to keep that in mind. Girls tend to be 18 months to 2 years before boys. That's my background. You do not need to read that. Moving on. All childhood is critical in terms of identity formation, but no more so than, as I've already just said, the adolescent years, where there are rapid changes. There are changes in brain development, a particular interest of mine. When the hormones click in, when teenage years start, what's called, I'm not going to start a lecture, and one or two of you may be a professor of psychology, so I don't want to say too much. But once a teenager starts being a teenager, the prefrontal cortex, which is essentially up here, if you lift your skin off, peel it back, you've got your prefrontal cortex there. That goes through a radical revolution, and in the last 20 years or so, psychologists are beginning to understand how critical that is. Basically, this bit of the brain which deals with emotions, decision-making, behaviour, in a young teenager, it gets completely wiped. Literally, the gaps, the synapses stop working. It's like the roads get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's not functioning. Then as the teenage years develop, they begin to build up again into motorway systems. But a teenager can almost not help themselves shouting, slamming doors, being grumpy, being monosyllabic. It's got a clear physiological base. That's the first thing that happens in teenage years. We've got physical and sexual maturity, obviously. The important thing that comes out of physical and sexual maturity from an identity point of view is a child of that age gets obsessed with their appearance as part of their identity. What happens then is something called mutual interpersonal perspective taking. That means children post-11 start to see themselves through the eyes of those people that are looking at them. So it's as though I'm looking at one of my colleagues there, Jacqueline McNulty, and I'll try to understand how she is seeing me. And that's the first stage in identity formation. Why teenagers spend so long on Facebook, so long on a telephone? It's trying to engage with their identity that way. That brings me to the modern pressures that teenagers face, probably more so than I did. Today, amongst many, many teenagers in the Western world, including Hong Kong, teenagers are under massive pressure to succeed at university, to get into the right university and exams. Parental pressure as well as school pressure. I've already mentioned the pressure of social media. That is a huge and growing influence on teenagers. And in Malvern, UK, we are finding out there are many ways of trying to manage that. The pressures that teenagers put on themselves through being continually linked up to Facebook and WhatsApp and all those different methods of communication. Dare I say, it's a difficult topic. Pornography. I don't think it's just teenagers. Evidence in the UK and in America indicates that children as young as 7 have access to pornography. Some really grim stuff that's available. And blow me down, a week ago when I was thinking about doing this talk, I found out that Hong Kong has the highest ratage of pornography access in the world. In the world, Hong Kong. I didn't expect that. So teenagers are grappling with that, and schools and parents have to help deal with that situation. Something else which perhaps you might not consider an issue that teenagers and younger children as well are very concerned about is the environment. Young children sometimes have nightmares about what is going on in the world and the environment. It's a real worry for them. You and I might look at it very coldly and rationally, understanding what's going on in the world, but it's a real concern to young children and teenagers. And schools like Malvern have a responsibility to demonstrate to teenagers and little children how to cope with all the changes that are going on in the world today when it comes to the environment. Adolescence is also a time of trying out identities. A young teenager will try out identities almost on a weekly scale, trying to find out who they actually are. What Malvern College tries to do in the UK, as it will do in Hong Kong, is to give children of all ages, not just teenagers, the opportunity to try out different identities. What does that mean? It means giving a child an opportunity to ask themselves, am I a sporty person? Am I an academic? A thespian? Am I a scientist? A musician? A leader? An organizer? An outdoor person? Am I a problem solver? Or indeed any combination of those and a lot more. Malvern tries to give children the ability to try these identities out. When they reach 16, 17, 18, even early 20s, identity then begins to settle. But children have to have the ability to try out these different things. Incidentally, if you have questions, I'll try and have a little 5 minutes or so at the end. Central to a Malvern education, this is really stating the obvious if you've done any research about Malvern, central is high, very high academic standards and examination success. You can virtually take that for granted. Coming to Malvern College, that's a given. High academic standards, great examination success. But, this is a really big but, and I speak passionately about this but. I mean, I'm an academic. I've spent a long time, as I've already said, in a number of universities. The academic thing is a given. But I feel very passionately that one has to move beyond just the academics to enable a child to develop as a whole person. In the end, a child's success at life, success at career, is not just getting the grades. We've got to ensure that that child is fulfilled more generally. So, looking at academic fulfillment and how it relates to personal development, the IB curriculum, which of course Malvern Hong Kong is going to teach right the way through, from the little children, PYP, right up to 18-year-olds. The IB curriculum is based on inquiry, engagement with the subject, understanding rather than rote learning, learning by heart, making connections between subjects and ideas. This is what happens at all stages of the curriculum, as I say, from the PYP, the primary stage, right up to the diploma. This approach, I would argue, gives a child the very best opportunity to develop a lifelong interest in learning and an ability to enjoy learning. And here's the important bit. It also provides the framework for being able to use knowledge rather than learn it. And this is why Malvern is such an advocate of it. Once that type of learning is in place, that goes hand in hand with personality development. Active learning that the IB promotes engages directly with the process of identity formation. In short, simplistically, if a child is doing hands-on science, they've got Bunsen burners and they're doing experiments, or they're delivering a talk on Shakespeare, if they're actively engaged with what they're doing, that provides an ample opportunity for personality growth. Excuse me 1 second. Next slide. Collaboration and personality development. Collaboration with others provides another way of enhancing personality development. Collaboration with other children, child to child, collaboration with a teacher, collaboration with a house, I'll come back to what that means in a second, or collaboration with a school as a whole is a skill that is developed throughout the child's life in a Malvern career. Collaboration. How is that taught? As I've already implied, in science lessons where children do experiments, in English lessons where a group of children prevent a joint project, in the middle years project, lots of collaboration. In games, I'm a very strong supporter of games. In games, teamwork is paramount, and the lessons you apply in a game of rugby or a game of football or whatever, you can apply in many other contexts. When I was young, 13 or 14, I was playing football. I didn't love football, had to play football, and I was the right wing position, I think. And I was taught I couldn't shoot for the goal. I had to pass it to the right person. I'd love to go for the goal, but I had to pass it to the right person who then went for the goal. That's teamwork. That's collaboration. That's important. Another way in which collaboration is taught at Malvern is taking part in a house play, in a school orchestra, in a school band. Very important again. Taking part or leading a house assembly. I'm going to come back to what a house is in a minute, because that is pivotal. Organising a house debate, a house sports team, even a bus signature list where children sign onto a bus route develops certain skills. So, giving a child ample opportunities to experience such collaboration in various settings provides huge opportunity for personal growth and fulfillment, as well as skills for later life. Confidence and personality development. Every Malvern child has to be given the chance to build confidence, from little children from 3 years right up to 18-year-olds. This is essential. So how is it done? It's found throughout the curriculum. Again, when a child is asked to deliver a little talk in an English lesson on a Shakespearean play, heavens, not many weeks ago I had to listen to a talk in Malvern, UK, where one of our sixth formers gave a talk on black holes. Whoa, it was powerful. Very, very, very good talk. But the ability to stand up, dare I say, like this, is a wonderful experience to go through to develop one's personality and develop one's confidence. My colleague mentioned this morning, debating. We're going to teach debating. It's going to be mandatory at all levels. We already do this in the UK with younger pupils. My intention is to do it at all levels in Hong Kong. So children are taught to debate. Again, informal concerts. What I'd like to put on in Hong Kong is proper formal concerts where children get ready to do musical performances for parents in a very formal manner. But also, if that's too big a step to make for a 9 or 10-year-old or an older child, to take part in an informal concert where they play in front of half a dozen teachers and some of their friends, and then build it up so the confidence grows. Get a child onto a stage, slowly and carefully, tremendous for their confidence. This is very important, what I'm about to say now. When a child enters Malvern, again I'm going to come back to this in my conclusion, they will be allocated a house, which is a group of people. That will become a focus for their identity. Their house group will provide many opportunities for confidence building. Head of house, deputy head of house, captain of the team, library rep, bus rep, any position like that is important to a child and is a really good stepping stone for later development. However, and important however, I think perhaps even more important, or at least as important as confidence, a child has to be able to deal with failure. The importance of resilience. This is something that Malvern UK is paying a great deal of attention to now, and I would like to do the same in HK, in Hong Kong. It's dealing with failure, failing a test, losing a match, making musical mistakes in a concert, which are so important, and indeed more important than responding to applause. How a child develops the ability to deal with failure. My own son, when he's a football fanatic, and when he was 13, 14-ish, and his team, he was the team captain, when his team lost, he was diabolical. His behaviour went down. He could not deal with losing, and he had to be taught. So what we're going to do in Malvern, Hong Kong, again something I've learned from Malvern UK, is if there are any matches going on, at the end of the match, what do the pupils do? They shake the hands of the opposition, even if they play disastrously. A child has to be resilient to negative experiences. I believe that passionately because it doesn't always go right. Without wishing to get into the argument about nature versus nurture, the vast majority of children have one or more talents which should be identified. How much these talents come from genetics, how much they come from being taught, is open to question. It's probably a bit of both. Malvern takes identifying talents or passions in a child seriously. The housemaster or housemistress of each house grouping will be charged. One of the things that housemaster has to do, or housemistress, is identify what that child's gifts or talents are. It's only ever so occasionally that a child isn't seen to have some passion, some gift for something. But once that gets recognition by the housemaster, housemistress, or by the school, and the child feels successful in whatever it is, that success then feeds through in many other spheres, including the academic sphere. So experiencing success via the passion that a child has, via the housemistress or housemaster, is again a critical thing that a Malvern education will focus on. Actually, to tell you the truth, the problem is when a child has too many gifts. And that child, in my experience, is the child who's got too many things to do and they get too stressed out. They're in that team, this team, they're in that club, they're in charge of debating. That has to be watched. And again, it's the housemistress or housemaster's job to keep an eye on that. Anecdotal evidence, that tends to be more girls than boys. Might be wrong, but it tends to be girls that demonstrate real success in lots of things all at once. And the housemistress' job is to just keep that all in line. Almost done. If I could turn my sheet over, bear with me. The house environment. Okay, this is a house dining room in Malvern, UK, and what we're going to do in Malvern, Hong Kong is to ensure that in addition to every child joining a house, they're going to eat in houses. There'll be one dining room, but they'll eat in house groups with the teachers. What I want to work against is teachers eating lunch away from the pupils. The teachers will eat with the children so that they can demonstrate, they can teach the children how to do small talk, they can teach the children how to eat properly, to teach children to say, "How was your day, sir?" That kind of thing. So, on entering Malvern, every child will join a house. This will be that child's inner identity with the school. The house structure, with a housemaster or housemistress, various house tutors, will provide the bedrock of that child's educational experience and becomes the focus of their personality development. It is through the house that much of what I've already spoken about takes place. And it is this emphasis on the house that makes a Malvern, one of the things that makes a Malvern education unique. The academic emphasis is powered through the housemistress or housemaster. The housemistress or master will keep an eye on the academic progress of a child. If a child isn't doing well, support will be put into place. Conversely, if a child is doing really well, that child will be given extra help to push them up even more. Works both ways. The Housen will oversee the child's PSE, Personal and Social Education Programme, where they will discuss sex, relationships, mobile phones, Facebook, all that kind of thing. The House will oversee opportunities for collaboration, confidence building, resilience building, as I've already talked about. Positions of responsibility in the house teams, house events, house dinners, house singing, all those kind of things. It is the Housen, as I've already said, who will identify a child's talents and passions. So, it's the house structure that provides the framework for such opportunities that themselves form the bedrock of personality and identity development. Conclusion. I've already said that Malvern values high academic standards, and I've imagined that many of our pupils will go on to the best universities in the world as they do in Malvern, UK. However, Malvern also holds a child's wider development as an essential part of what we do. I'm going to repeat this, I know I've said it already, but a child's eventual success in terms of career, happiness, fulfillment, goes beyond academic success. Academic success alone is not sufficient. It's got to be balanced. So what's the goal? Our aim is to enable children to reach their potential, academic, sporting, artistic, or whatever, whilst giving them ample opportunity to develop themselves and their personalities, so that they emerge from Malvern as happy, fulfilled, and ambitious young women and men ready to embark on the next stage of their young lives. Thank you very much.